So to the big stories, the papers again full of stories this morning about the potential of Project Restart, what might happen when, more developments in the last 24 hours. The EFL telling their clubs yesterday evening not to return to training until May the 25th now at the earliest. That date has been pushed back a week. Premier League managers also met and voiced their view that they might need a month to get their players up to speed. If that was the case, that would mean pushing the potential restart date back to June the 19th. All speculation right now still, though. But is it safe for players to return to training? That still remains a big question hanging over everything. Delighted to welcome Glenn Murray forward to the Football Show this morning. How are you, Glenn? And I understand that you were involved in these conversations yesterday along with lots of your Premier League counterparts. I suppose the first thing to ask you really is do you feel now, having spoken to the medical experts on that call yesterday, much more confident about returning to training and returning to football?
Well, firstly, morning, guys. Yes, morning, I was on the call yesterday. It was a long call. It was in-depth. And we mainly spoke about the first phase, not about phase 2 or phase 3. Phase 1 is just returning to the training grounds on a social distancing level. And then phase 2 will be sort of stepping into contact. And I think most of the players are pretty happy with phase 1. Obviously, there's a lot of people with different situations out there. People who sort of live with vulnerable people, pregnant wives or girlfriends. Obviously, it's been well documented about the BAME community being at higher risk. So yeah, it's. I think it's a really difficult one to step into phase 2, and I think there is a little bit of reluctance in certain pockets of players.
How long are they saying the gap is then, Glenn, between phase 1 and phase 2? Because I don't think we've been party to that information yet.
Yeah, we haven't either. Phase 2 hasn't quite been drawn up yet, but I think we're looking sort of towards a mid-June restart to the Premier League. So obviously, phase 1 couldn't be too long because you need to step into phase 2 and phase 3 before the start.
Glenn, there's at the start of obviously this pandemic and the football closing down, there was a lot of talk of football's wages and how there could be a consensus across the league with different clubs and different players in dressing room. Do you think this is exactly the same with the situation actually going back training, actually playing in games? It's very difficult to get everyone in the dressing room to think the same.
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible. I mean, obviously you've been in a dressing room and you've led a dressing room, Jamie, and you know what it's like to try and get sort of 25 lads all on board, and we're not talking about sort of 25 lads with the same sort of mentality. Obviously, we've got people from all over the world in different situations, and it's difficult to lead a group and for everyone to agree. I think first and foremost, players. When I say that some players may be reluctant to return, I don't want that to be perceived as sort of the snowflake mentality and we're worried about ourselves, because I don't think that's the case at all. It's more about the people that we're going home to that we're worried about. Like I say, everyone's in different situations and have different people at home with possible illnesses or pregnancies or children, young newborns. Yeah, I mean, we just need to take everyone's situations into consideration and that.
I mean, this debate at times about the league actually playing on has been more with probably chief executives, your own one at Brighton, in Paul Barber being quite vocal. And it's almost being played as if it's like the bottom 6, almost against the rest of the top of the league in terms of the season going on. But from a player's point of view, does that come into your head at any stage, the position Brighton are in, or is it a case of actually we want to get back playing football? That's what we do. That's what we love, if it's safe for everybody.
Listen, I think our standpoint is from players is that if the games get played, the worst 3 teams in the league get relegated, and that is plain and simple. That's always been, and it always will be, and hopefully it will be in this case as well. My only thought on that is that obviously the Championship, if we manage to play our games in the Premier League, whoever finishes in the bottom 3 deserve to go down. only to be relegated, you need the Championship to finish their games, because if they're not finishing their games, they don't deserve to be promoted. So that would be my only thought on that. But from a personal point of view, I mean, I'm sort of being a little bit reluctant and sort of speaking on behalf of the players. I'm sort of shaving time off my career. I'm sort of towards the end, and I'd like to think I can give a more rounded view on it, and not such a selfish view. As far as I'm concerned, I come out and I've said these things, and Twitter, I get lots of people on Twitter coming for me. But from a personal point of view, yeah,
don't go on Twitter.
I might get one more year on a little bit more money in the Premier League, but if we were to get relegated, from a personal point of view, I might get a little bit more game time. Goals might be easy to come by, and I might get an extra year. So who knows? So this isn't sort of a personal vendetta to keep my club in the Premier League.
Glenn, I was just thinking as well, Paul Barber's been quite concerned about having neutral venues. Where do you stand on that? Was that brought up in the meeting at all yesterday?
No, that wasn't brought up at all. That's obviously been brought up with the hierarchy of the football clubs, and they've already come to a decision. So that wasn't brought up at all in the meeting. My only thought on that, really, Jamie, is that obviously, if we've played sort of Liverpool away, which is a really difficult place, and we lost, unfortunately, then not to be able to play them at home, that gives us sort of a disadvantage, and it's not such a fair playing field if we're playing them at a neutral venue after playing away at Anfield.
And the other point as well, I suppose it wouldn't have been something you would have spoken about yesterday, Glenn, but contracts with players, because there'll be, I'm sure, 2 or 3 players at your club that contracts finish, end of July, and will they maybe go on or whatever and play? Are they willing to take that chance that maybe they might get injured? Where do the players stand on that? Have you spoken about that as a group in terms of being one of the leaders in that dressing room?
Yeah, we have spoken sort of personally about that. That wasn't brought up in the meeting yesterday. Again, there's a lot for the clubs to sort out in this situation. Those players that are out of contract obviously aren't going to walk into another contract right away, because no leagues are up and running at the minute. So it's a difficult situation. I think that the only resolve to that is to lengthen those contracts for the remainder of this season, and until sort of football gets back on its feet, and then sort of see where that takes us from there.
Glenn, I've been thinking if football does come back and there is no supporters there, there was 2 questions really. The fact that certain clubs are being more vocal about maybe problems with the league start, and how would that affect their players then psychologically going into games if you don't think it's right, maybe at neutral venues or behind closed doors, whatever that may be. And also, number 2, do you think playing behind closed doors will benefit the technical teams more than the robust teams, if you like? And should that put Brighton maybe in a better position in terms of actually how well you have played this season, in terms of keeping the ball and being so expressive in the way you play under Graham Potter?
Yeah, I don't think that any footballers have got a problem with playing behind closed doors. That's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately. And it is level playing field. It's fair for everyone. No one has any fans there. And yeah, I mean, obviously, you go away to some grounds and it's a pressurised situation. Even sometimes our home fans, when we've been playing, our more patient build-up have maybe got a little bit frustrated, let's say. So yeah, that will take a certain element of sort of pressure off players that or teams, should I say, that play a certain brand of football like we do.
Glenn, if I can pick up on the safety aspect, which is where we sort of started the conversation, the Premier League, I think, want to spell out to you guys that when you do go back into training, that you're almost stepping into the safest environment in Britain. If you'll have been tested at least once, maybe even a couple of times, your exposure is very limited to the amount of people that you're going to be coming up against, as opposed to if you were anybody in this country popping down to the supermarket, where you might be exposed to 30, 40 people, maybe even more, who are not observing social distancing, who haven't been tested.
What, you think footballers don't use supermarkets now?
Well,
don't you get it delivered?
I'm not quite sure what the point is.
Supermarket, Jamie.
I'm not quite sure what that point is, though, Glenn.
Well, listen, we've all got to eat. It's a necessity. Football isn't necessarily a necessity. It's a game. It's a sport. It's at the minute. I mean, what if we go through all this rigmarole of trying to get back started, and we have a second peak and we stopped anyways? I just can't understand. After just sort of loosening the lockdown, why we're in such a rush to get it back? But why can't we just wait sort of a month or so to see if things go to plan?
But I guess that's what the phasing is about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, what's the point in getting halfway through the phasing and stopping? Why not see how the country deal with it, like softening the lockdown first before we even think about starting unnecessary sports when people are dying all around us and the death rate's still high?
Is it harder generally, Glenn, to speak about these issues, do you think? Because as a player at a bottom six club, it's always going to be levelled against you that you don't want the season to get started again under any circumstances.
Listen, yeah, it is. But just because of that, I can't hold my judgment. I've told you sort of my personal take on it and how it could possibly benefit me as an older player and if we did get relegated. But obviously, I don't want Brighton to get relegated. I've worked hard to get them to this position, and the last thing I want is to see them relegated. But let's make no bones about it. We're not in the bottom three, and we haven't been in the bottom three all year. So why are we going to get relegated?
Dave said that, Matt, not me. Glenn, is there anything in the fact that the Bundesliga is starting at the weekend, and that's something that, you know, players as a groupies are all going to watch and see how that goes, and could that give it sort of a boost to morale in some ways in dressing rooms that the season could actually get up and running?
Yeah, obviously we're all going to be watching the Bundesliga because it's football and we all love football. It'll be nice to see a live sport on TV, without doubt. But I think what we're not taking into consideration is that Germany have only had 8,000 deaths, I think, and they've got 20 million more people than us. Now we're up to like 34,000 now. We're the worst hit country in Europe. No one seems to be taking that in consideration.
No, Glenn, listen, I hear what you're saying. In terms of just what the meeting went, how the meeting went yesterday, Glenn, there's been this talk about the tackling guidelines and maybe turning away from tackles and not getting too close. I mean, for me, that's ridiculous, and you can't play football. If we're gonna try and encourage that, there's no point playing. Was that mentioned yesterday at all?
No, that wasn't mentioned at all. I haven't heard anything of that. But obviously, we got sort of a protocol of returning to training. Things like spitting is frowned upon. They don't want you to spit, which I just find incredible. It's not because we're dirty people that we spit. It's that you produce a protein in when you exercise that makes your saliva sticky and you want to offload it. It's just plain and simple. Sort of they're encouraging face masks to training, which I just sort of can't get my head around. I can't understand how you're going to do a sport of high level intensity and try and breathe through a face mask. And then on top of all this, some of the protocols are you are only allowed in the training ground 15 minutes before training. As both Jamies know, the queue for strappings and things in the physio room, sometimes half an hour long. And then 15 minutes afterwards to get away with no recovery methods at all available, no ice baths. Physiotherapy is only essential, so no masseuses, no cryotherapy, no ice baths, no warm baths, no food at the training grounds. Now, we're playing in the Premier League, and it's obviously a global brand, and everyone wants to watch it because of the level it's played at and the intensity it's played at, week in, week out, sometimes twice a week. And I just can't understand how that is going to be sort of done, taking all those things away from us and trying to fit a large amount of games in such a short period of time.
Glenn, if you were to put it to a vote to your teammates right now, and say that we can start in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks maybe, or give it 6 weeks, what do you think the players would do? Do you think they just want to get on with it now, or do you think they genuinely want to wait until they feel that it's a safer environment for them?
Like we mentioned before, I'm not going to get all 25 to vote one way or another. There's going to be a split somewhere in the camp. I think the majority would probably err on the side of caution and go for 6 week starts. But I mean, I have to put that to them to tell you the true answer.
Glenn, just listen to your answers. It seems that you're probably a little bit negative in terms of actually going back and starting the season. But if the season doesn't finish, what are the ramifications of your own club? Spoke to you about that financially. We've had club owners coming on and saying the massive effect it'll have on clubs. I'm not sure a Premier League club will go out of business, but when is this going to go away? So if we don't actually finish now, as it seems to me you're not massively keen on, when do you think it can start, and how do you think it affects next season if the protocols that are in place now in terms of all the testing, that's going to be the same, isn't it, 3 or 4 months down the line until there's actually a vaccine, when it becomes almost you can go back? There's always going to be some sort of risk.
Yeah, listen, if it comes to it, I will return to play. As far as I'm concerned, I've got no vulnerability in my family, but I can see the point of view of lads that have or the BME players. It's different. It's different risk for different people, and fortunately for me, I'm in what I would think is quite a safe situation where others aren't. So it's a difficult one. I mean, I can just speak myself, or I can speak on behalf of my teammates or other players that I've spoken to throughout the league. But yeah, you're right, Cara. It is going to go on. But I just feel as though if we give ourselves a little bit more time, the country will be up and running a little bit. We'll have learned more about this virus. We won't necessarily have a vaccine, but we'll be better prepared to deal with it if anyone does get it.
Just one final point, Glenn. Just want to pick up on something you did say earlier. We had Stuart Webber, the Norwich sporting director, on yesterday, who echoed the same feeling that you did about championship clubs getting promoted if they don't finish the season. He said that can't happen. And you said the same thing. Do you think that is a widely held view amongst Premier League clubs, and particularly those who, all right, if you're not in the bottom three, might have the prospect of being relegated if you were to finish the season?
Yeah, it's. I just think we're talking about fairness, and we're trying our best to try and get this Premier League finished. No one wants it voided. And if we manage to finish it, like I've said, and like I think all the players agree, is that the bottom three sides will be the worst three sides over the course of the season and deserve to go down. But if the clubs below us in the Championship aren't finishing their season, why should they get promoted?
They might argue with that point, Glenn. Leeds and United and West Brom and probably Fulham would argue that point.
If the Championship finish, brilliant. The Premier League and the Championship finish, then we swap places. Whoever finishes bottom three and whoever wins the playoffs and finishes the top two in the Championship gets promoted. But if the Premier League finishes and we get relegated without them sort of kicking the ball, I can't see that that's a fair way to finish.